when it comes to life, when it comes to growth, when it comes to transformation, the show always must go on. We spend most of our time doing the work, the grunt work, tending to the garden, watering the plants. There's small, short amounts of time where we get to the points of the elevation where, for instance, the flower blooms. And I was thinking about my hibiscus plant, and most of the time my hibiscus plant is existing as a plant. It's being watered, it's taking in the light, it's got beautiful green leaves on it, it's growing. 1 or 2 times a year, I will wake up in the morning and there will be this amazing hibiscus flower that has bloomed. The flower blooms in the morning with the rising sun, opens up, and then by the end of the day, when the sun is going down, the flower is closed and falls off. And that happens just twice a year. So the process of transformation and growth, when we're seeking change, when we're seeking elevation, when we're seeking things to shift in our life, is like this. Like so many times we plant the seed and then we run outside and we expect there to be a crop of corn. This isn't realistic. It takes time for the crop to grow. And if we're not tending to the crop in the process of growth, then it's not going to yield any fruit or vegetables. Same thing with performing. I think about all the amazing shows that I've performed and how much I love performing. And then I think about the amount of time that I spend on stage. A show is 15 to 20 minutes max. Of course, there's shows that are longer and there's shows that are shorter. But I also think about the countless number of hours that I've spent booking gigs, writing set lists, editing music, practicing, rehearsing, choreographing people, teaching people, writing choreographies, going through school to improve my skills at dance and choreography. Working for other people, there has been hundreds of thousands of hours that have went into the preparation work that allows me to get to a point of a 15-minute show on stage. It's 15 minutes of happiness, of pure joy, of ecstatic movement, of just my favorite part of it, of course, is the performing. But to get to that point, there's the organizing, the preparing, the talking to people, having the conversations. There's all the work that goes into it. If all of that work doesn't go into it, then either the show doesn't happen or there's problems with it. It doesn't grow. It doesn't become a show. If I don't respond and reach out to people and do my work of attempting to book gigs and answer people's phone calls, and there won't be a show. It won't happen. So in the process of transformation and change with our bodies, with our lives, when we're seeking whatever kind of shift or movement we're seeking, whether it's like the losing of weight or changing a career or relationships, or there's all the different things in life that we sit around and we think like, oh, I'm unhappy with this sector of my life, or maybe there's like many sectors of life we're not happy with, and maybe it's been a while. We might think like, I've been struggling with this area of my life for so long and I'm not getting the results that I'm seeking. And therefore, the question, a lot of times we then kind of look outside of ourselves and start to look at who can help us and, what next best thing is going to be the thing that is going to help us have the miraculous result that we're seeking. And sometimes there are external things and support and processes and programs and people and vitamins and minerals and foods and excursions and journeys and retreats and healing and therapists and all the manners of things that do help us get to a point. But in the end of the day, it really comes down to us sitting with ourselves in our space. And the question becomes, how are we holding space for ourselves? How are we holding space for ourselves? Are we holding space with the expectation, or are we holding space with the idea if there's something's wrong with us that needs to be fixed? Are we holding space at all for ourselves? Are we expecting other people to hold that space, but we're not willing to do the work? We're not actually doing the work, or we're like a master illusionist telling ourselves that we're doing the work and playing all sorts of fun tricks and jokes on ourselves, making us think that we are going through all the motions of shifts and changes, but we're not grounding it into our reality. So it's just a bunch of air, it's a bunch of words. I'm working on this, I'm doing this. Okay, but what results are we having? You know, I'm working on losing weight. Great, what results are we having? Have we actually been able to lose the weight? And if not, why? What's holding us back? Well, I've tried exercise, I've went to my doctor, I've looked at this, I've done that, I've done all these different things. Okay, so what is it then that needs to be examined? Are you sitting around drinking every night? Are you snacking on food throughout the day, or, you know, telling people that you eat healthy when inside you're eating like a bag of chips and unhealthy food constantly? Like, how are we lying to ourselves? How are we fooling ourselves? How are we creating this bubble, this projection bubble outside of ourselves of what we want to be true for us, while we're hiding it within under this facade that we're creating, not being real? You know, these are the things that we need to examine. And I was taken back to a plant medicine ceremony that I did, and in this particular ceremony, at one part of the night, I was having a really challenging time. Some stuff started to come up, and I wanted to block it. I didn't want to pay attention to it at all. And in that moment, it became very frightful. I became very afraid, and I started to reject it and try to shut it down. And I wanted nothing more than to just have a quick path out of it. I did not want to go in and do the work. There was no way out of it at that point. I was deeply into it, and in clawing at people to help me, and ground me and help me ground in, you know, there was nothing anybody could actually do for me. No one can ground me, and I had to do that for myself. Someone did make the suggestion to go out by the fire, which was a great suggestion. Considering my communion with the elements of fire, it actually proved to be a wonderful suggestion. But I laid out by the sacred fire there that night and went through, you know, a death rebirth process in my healing. And, you know, but I fought it, and I fought it pretty hardcore. And I kept asking, you know, people that would come out there, the helpers, for advice. And, you know, one of the helpers told me, you want advice? My advice is stop fighting this. You came here to heal. You know, let yourself heal. And so, you know, I did allow myself to go into the process there that night. And there was a point where I noticed, like, throughout the night, there were people coming out and tending to me, you know, like doing the prayers and the healings with the feathers and all the, you know, the smoke and all of the different things to kind of help move me along with it. But ultimately the work was mine to do, and it was a matter of time and a matter of presence, and a matter of being with the process to let it fully release out of me. You know, fighting it was only going to facilitate the reabsorption of what was surfacing. You know, and at one point, while I was laying there and I kept going through these waves of just, really deep trauma coming up, I happened to notice some people, some helpers that were sitting around the fire, and they had been smoking sacred tobacco, and they weren't doing anything, they weren't talking, they weren't interfering with me. But I realized that they were not monitoring me, they were not influencing or affecting my process, they were not interfering with my process at all. Like, there had already been all of the people that came and did the prayers and, you know, did the healings and were there to support me through the thicket of it. But it became this point of some people just sitting there. And I really realized that what they were doing was holding space. Not with an intention, not with an expectation, not with even a thought of, well, and I can't say what they were thinking or feeling. I don't know, right? But what I can say is I didn't feel an energetic projection coming from them. I didn't feel like they were like, oh, like, you're suffering so bad. My heart is hurting because you're suffering so bad. Let me figure out how to help you, or let me do this for you, or let me try to ease your pain. No, they were holding space and just being a complete, clear, embodied witness to my process. No expectation, no interference, nothing. They were simply sitting in embodied presence. That's powerful. It didn't feel that powerful at the time because it's like I was aware of this, but not in the moment. I became aware of it later on, and the more that time has went by, I've really felt the power of that moment, of those women who were sitting there around the sacred fire with me, holding space. There was one male and the fire tender, and then several women. And they were letting me go through my process without interference. And today that brought me to tears, ultimately thinking about, because as I'm going through my own transformation and my own process, many times in the thick of the struggle, we want to reach out for help. We want the doctors and the therapists and the healers and our friends and everyone to help. And it's true, help helps. Help is helpful, especially when it's helpful help. I think there's unhelpful help, but there's helpful help. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's us with ourselves. It's us having to sit with ourselves. It's us having to hold space for ourselves. No one else can do that for us. Only we can sit there and be our own witness, can get really real with ourselves. Holding space, being immersed, being in embodied, I'm working it out here, being embodied, present in timeless space. Take that in. Being embodied, present in timeless space. No expectations. Letting go of the illusion that we've projected outside of ourselves, that bubble that we've created as the master illusionist. For many years, we've put on a really good show. The seats have been full. People line up outside to buy tickets to come into our illusion show. No more. The times have changed. What allowed us to operate in that way is no longer possible. The veils have been lifted. The dimensional walls that were built that allowed us to hide in different pockets of the universe, hide behind things, hide behind ourselves, those have crumbled. What we kept up as an ego projection, a world, a false world we built outside of ourselves of who we wanted to be, of what we admired in other people, their goals, their lives, their bodies, their everything, is no more. It costs too much energetically to try to maintain that false illusion, that world. The show costs too much to put on. And it's changed. No one's lining up to see that type of a show anymore. True magic exists in transparent authenticity. In dropping that illusionary facade, that projection we've created that is not our authentic self. In stepping into our transparent authenticity, that's where the true magic is. That's where the powerful show is. And that's where people will line up behind us, in front of us, around us, and support us, is when we are able to hold space for ourselves, step into ourself, embodied, present, in timeless space, activating our transparent authenticity. That's the show that people want to watch these days. That's the show where we spend 363 days out of the year growing, and we bloom twice for one day. That's a beautiful flower.